what is the problem that you're having in your business? Start really there, and then like ask the question, well, why do we want to use AI? What are we trying to solve? Data is everything, right? Like it gives you the ability to make better decisions. And one thing we've seen that some of our customers have done a really good job, the ones that are really thriving, succeeding, scaling, is they have a good data warehouse in place. If you are not taking a proactive approach to staying compliant, you're not going to be able to stay in this business. You can no longer just dial away and make hundreds of calls and call the consumer endless a number of times. That strategy doesn't work. So you really got to pay attention to what works for you based on the data, again, what the story that the data tells. I think a lot of customers expect this technology to just be set up, set it and forget it. It's not a reality we live in, and as much as AI may help you automate things, you still, at the end of the day, need to have some sort of administration and maintain things.
Well, hey everyone, welcome back to First Contact Stories of the Call Center. Today we're joined with Nima Hakimi from Convoso. He's the CEO and co-founder. They're a leader in the AI technology sales space. And look, we're really going to be excited to talk about this unique perspective from the future of the contact center space, a focus on AI, machine learning, and obviously the regulatory challenges in this landscape. So Nima, welcome to the show. Excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Christian. Looking forward to doing this.
Yeah, one of the things we always start the conversation with is, what's the origin story? How did you get to where you are today? Not everyone wakes up and says, hey, I'm going to work in the contact center space. So what did your early career look like, or even journey into your careers, and how did it get to where you are today?
Great question. I would say definitely did not plan on being in it. It was just something that happened. And prior to even getting into this, I was just always very entrepreneurial with my brother. I would say not that this is a good or bad thing. I just never worked for anybody in my life. So it's always been something in us to start different businesses. And at a young age, I would say when I was in high school, the internet was still relatively new. And so there was always this desire to do something with this technology. And we started just creating websites and putting ads on them and generating revenue that way. And it was just something fun to do. It was nice to do. And after graduating high school, we were looking to see what's next. And at the time, a family member of ours had a mortgage business where they had salespeople manually picking up the phone, to call their leads. And this cousin of mine, he was looking for some technology to automate it. So my brother and business partner, he was a self-taught developer and engineer. So he asked him for help to see if he could put something together to automate it. And at that time, I think it was 2005, the voice over IP was still relatively new. It was very revolutionary, making calls through your computer, like wow, right? It was such a unique thing, a new thing. And so after several months of helping him put something together to automate that process and got it working, we realized there's a lot of potential here for businesses to take advantage of this cloud-based technology where you don't need to purchase, premise-based hardware, which was really expensive at the time. So we just started reaching out to other people in our networks who had similar businesses to see if they had a need, and it turned from a favor into a business. And so there's a lot more to it, but that was really the origins of. It really began in that in the mortgage space to begin with.
It's so interesting how. When you have an idea of like, hey, let's do something fun, it's going to make some money and do this thing. And then you have that moment where there's this epiphany, right? Where you go, wow, there's a way to make money in this other spirit from an entrepreneur perspective. But at some point, an entrepreneur, right, has to have a big enough staff, or eventually maybe has staff, where you have to become not only a manager, but a leader, right? And as you go through looking back through your career journey of being an entrepreneur from day one, were there any turning points or challenges in that journey where it's really shaped how you approach to being a leader, and especially a leader in the technology space?
Yeah, so I'm going to be honest. I would say being a great leader and then managing, or both of those things together, could be very challenging, right? And what I mean by that, my personal value of continuously improving and self-improvement is something that, at Convoso, one of our core values is continuous growth. And so I would say early on in the business, the product was not really that great. It was doing what needed to do, but it wasn't really performing that well. And we always knew that it needed to be better. And so, I'd say it took about 10 years. When I say 10 years, it really took 10 years and trying to rebuild this product 3 times from the ground up without going into the nitty gritty of it. We had spent a lot of time trying to make it better, and we had to really throw away the code and do this three times. And so I would say that the turning point was really just being persistent and not giving up, really doing that, and our team seeing that, and they then follow that same behavior and lead when there's a challenge that comes. Because we know in business, every day there's, you're fighting some sort of a battle, and it's a matter of just pushing through and working together as a team, and then everybody else will follow through that. And so I would say there's a turning point about 10 years into the business where we finally launched the new application. It was built from the ground up, everything from scratch. And our customers started seeing a noticeable difference in their performance, specifically as, an outbound, the contact rate and getting the person on the phone is one of the most important and first important metrics. And so we were able to show that difference. And then as our customers saw that, they started migrating from the previous product that we had to a new one. And word started to spread that, what the noticeable difference is. So I would say that was a turning point in the business and just in this grid of not giving up and continuously moving forward every single day.
It's interesting when we talk about continuous improvement, you're talking about like this time period of 10 years, right? But it probably felt like 10 years, but at the same time, it's also like in a blink of an eye, right? That all this has happened. And now we have AI, right? And AI is moving so fast. And there's so much going on where people are going, whoa, I can't believe things are moving that fast. From your perspective, from your seat, what are you seeing how AI, machine learning, and other types of automation is really transforming or going to transform, the customer engagement landscape? And, what are you seeing coming around the corner?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about specifically on the sales side of things, AI these days, the sky's the limit. Your where you can take it is really where your imagination goes. I feel like is how it is. And so as we look at it in this space, I look at it in terms of optimizing lead management, predicting customer behavior with, real-time assistance, like what's happening during the call to guide the agent. And then not just that, like what's to come after that you can predict ahead of time based on how the conversation went, so that there's better follow-through and follow-up in that customer engagement and in that customer journey on what you do. And then, really ensuring compliance. We're in a very heavily regulated environment where really it's getting more complicated. And so how do you help AI support that compliance by making sure that, your agents are saying the right things on the phone, they're reading disclosures, right? Some of the states have different disclosure requirements. Is that happening? Are they dispositioning the calls correctly? But I would say, as AI will continue evolving, it's offering deeper insights into customer sentiment, automating even more complex workflows, and being able to integrate all these different systems that you're using to create this unified engagement experience. I would say it's still really fragmented in a way, right? Everybody's using 10 different tools, and like bringing them all together and then making sense of the data to give you insights and predictions ahead of time will help this space very immensely.
Yeah, I think you're right, where there's a lot of data that lives in silos, or it's not digested in a timely manner, or it's not actually given in action, right? You're not acting on the data, even though it's available to you, but it's not in a way for you to make a decision. So when it comes to adopting technology, right, and AI right now, as we've stated, there's just so much potential in that sales space, but also how does a company go about doing it the right way, right? And I think a lot of people are still trying to figure out, well, what do I even want AI to do in my sales organization? And then separately, how do I not waste time and spend a bunch of money and it messes up? So do you have any insight to what you're seeing on how people are adopting or maybe should approach adopting AI so they can get the great benefits you're talking about, but also potentially not wasting a bunch of time or getting discouraged?
Yeah, I would say it starts with what problem are you trying to solve really for your business, right? Every business has its own challenges. You kind of hear all the buzzwords of what everybody's trying to do and what they're trying to solve, but what is the problem that you're having in your business? Start really there, and then like ask the question, well, why? Why do we want to use AI? What are we trying to solve? Because like it can try to do a lot of different things. And so I would say starting with that question and really going deep before you just start entertaining anything and everything that has to do with AI is how I look at it. And in the world of, I mean, when we talk about data, I think really data is everything, right? Like it gives you the ability to make better decisions. So looking at it like that, I would say any business that wants to scale and grow needs to be able to look at data to come to conclusions. And one thing we've seen that some of our customers have done a really good job, the ones that are really thriving, succeeding, scaling, is they have a good data warehouse in place, a robust management practice in place that connects all these different systems. You know, you have your CRMs, you have your dialer, I mean, you have your media buying data. I mean, you have all these different systems you use. And if you can plug them into a data warehouse and then have the AI make sense of the data and ask it the questions you want answers to, I feel like that's like a very powerful way to take advantage of it. But first, fix and make sure the data, which is not always easy to do, work with somebody who's an expert at, don't try to do it in-house. I think a lot of businesses, especially small businesses, try to do everything in-house. So if you try to get somebody who knows how to put it together, put this data warehouse together, and then you are the expert in your business to know what kind of questions you wanted to ask, like in what areas the leads are converting at best, at what hours of the day, or different kind of deeper questions that will allow you then to make better business decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about for a long time, data being king, right? But being able to leverage that data in a meaningful way has always been the holy grail for a lot of people. Now, with that said, though, to park AI for a moment and automation, obviously the buzz topic, especially right now. What do you see independent of AI being like these significant trends that are going to be really shaping the contact center space? Is there anything you're seeing from your customers or specifically in the spaces like sales that you see changing or really having trends going on, especially going forward?
It's interesting. So setting, I would say if we look at it as a whole in terms of customer engagement, I would say one of the trends we're seeing that it's more so when it's an inbound environment, whether it's customer service or just an inbound conversation, because of, and I mean, we want to set AI aside, but because AI is starting to automate a lot of things, there is now this availability of the agent, more availability of the agent than there was before, to where being more proactive and predictive, like if there's something that goes wrong, if you have a customer base and there's something going on with the customer, that you reach out proactively to help them with whatever problems they're having. So we're seeing this shift towards being more proactive in your engagement from a customer service standpoint of view, by being able to have the data of what's happening, right? And making use of that and being plugged into it, you'll be able to figure out you'll be able to predict what's coming, and therefore reach out to your customer and try to help them resolve that problem. And if you can think about, if you have a problem with something and customer service calls you or somebody calls you to help you out, it's very powerful to have that ability. And then I would really say, we talked a little bit about compliance, but enhancing that automation of compliance. It's a very nuanced way. Compliance is very challenging, right? It's very complex. And every day something new comes out. So I would say the trend that we're seeing is just being able to automate how to stay compliant with all these different changes is something more and more people are paying attention to. In the past, there was, I would say some people either were ignorant or they didn't know any better when it came to what you have to do when it comes to compliance. But I see there's a shift now because AI can automate a lot of things, that it's easier to do that. And there's more people that are they're adhering more to compliance, which is a great thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the more companies can be aware on how to navigate compliance and how to optimize the customer's experience, business, right? Being able to still maintain your business, because there is a cost for compliance, right? It ain't free for a company to comply. But the more that you can automate, the more that you can make those things regularly and readily available for people, I think is definitely a strong piece. And one of the things, if we're on the topic of regulation, are you seeing anything improving in regulation, or is it just more and more of a burden to the customer? And how are you seeing people adopting tools that allows them to actually get compliant? Or are people just not dialing anymore? Are they going to stop dialing? Or, what is it that people can do and are doing so they can still maintain compliance?
Yeah, so I would say you have a mix depending on what size you're at or how long you've been doing this for. You see a different mix of how people view compliance. I believe at this point in time, based on how things have changed, if you are not taking a proactive approach to staying compliant, you're not going to be able to stay in this business, because it's no longer about the plaintiffs coming to you with their lawsuit for calling them or anything like that. It's more so about the regulators, the state attorney generals, that are not getting access to data from the telco carriers that give them that visibility. The Trace Act that was signed required, there's certain requirements that require now the telco carriers to report things up, which will then get reported up to the FCC. And so we're seeing, to some extent, a lack of awareness by the customer in that. So there is some responsibility we have in educating them that you want to be proactive around it. And we tend to see the customers listen to that when we do have those conversations. So there is that understanding and acceptance that, doing things in a compliant manner is the only way to stay in business and thrive in business. And what we've seen is when they do take those into consideration, that their business does better, just because you're not disrupted by these lawsuits or things like that. Right? Any lawsuit in the business can be very disruptive. So, you now have things like the reassigned number database. You have the mini TCPA rules around different states having requirements. There's just things coming on and on and on. And we're seeing a desire to adhere to those. It's just making the customer more aware, because they're focused on their business. And as much as they want to be compliant, things move so fast and change so fast that we have to do something on our end to help them be aware of it.
Yeah, no, it's great whenever companies can take the side of being aware of the compliance aspect of the business and how their tool sets can help people stay compliant, but also being able to even be aware that the industry has potentially massive changes, right? You have one-to-one consent that just, knocked on the door for a lot of companies come January, right? And people being able to figure out, does their business model still exist? Are they still able to do anything with their leads? Are they still able to manage through going forward? And so it's going to be interesting to see how companies adopt new technologies and new approaches, new business models. But when it comes to those that, let's step back into that dynamic of the fear of, humans being replaced by AI and machines, right? From your perspective, when you look at that debate, do you see or foresee that AI and bots is just going to replace all the agents, or do you still see a place in which the agents have a place and they work more together versus in just direct replacement?
Yeah, I don't see it as a direct replacement. I mean, you have people that are trying to do that, but I think it's going to be a team effort between the AI and agent, the agent taking on more complex parts of the conversation. And if you think about it, if you could free up the simple aspects of it as much as possible, then now the agent can be trained on doing the more complex aspects of the sale or thereafter. So I see it as being always a supplement, but not a replacement of the agent and the agent experience. I think I look at it as making the agent into a super agent by enabling them with AI in a variety of ways, whether it's in the conversation, before the conversation, providing them with additional data. But I believe there'll always be a place for an actual human agent, as much as many are trying to get that out of the way.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, just like when, IVRs got brought in and chatbots, there was this idea that you're just going to be able to deflect everybody. And it's going to be this magical thing that you're just not going to need people. They're going to be able to sell service. And obviously we know that when it's implemented poorly, you just end up eventually getting to a human being and you're just really upset, right? You're emotional. You need now this higher level of person that can engage with somebody that's that passionate about their poor experience. And so from your side, are you seeing the actual AI standalone products like voice bots and things that are more autonomous to actually work in isolation of an agent improving? Do you see them near term or even long term then be able to be really good at what they do? Or is it still kind of, I don't think they've figured it out yet?
I would say we're somewhere in the middle. At the same time, depending on how you're looking at it, are you looking at it from an inbound and outbound, and from a regulatory standpoint of view, there's still a lot of hurdles there to overcome in terms of what you need to do on an outbound. On an outbound, you do at this time need to state that it is an AI agent that is having that conversation, and so that impacts things as we've seen by doing it that way. It really depends. It's not a black or white thing. It depends on the intent. What are you doing with the conversation? What kind of conversation is it? But obviously with OpenAI, as we've seen, it has introduced a wave of innovations across the board. And so I could see it getting better over time. But it all really depends on what the use case is and what you're trying to do. It may not work for everything that you're trying to do. And I think that's the important factor to take into consideration when you are considering this type of technology. It goes back to what is the problem you're trying to solve? Why do you want to solve this problem? And then using that at the center of if an AI agent makes sense or not.
This is James. James is a contact center manager with a passion for philosophy and hiking. As a kid, he made a promise to himself that he would always follow his passion. Today, he ponders on the thought that this promise is probably the best decision he ever made. Today, James loves his job just as much as he loves hiking. So much that he sometimes brings the scent of fresh pine and the tranquility of the mountain streams back to the office with him. With Nobel Biz as his company's provider, James found the necessary peace of mind to finally bridge the gap between his passion and his work. By choosing to partner with the promise-keeping voice and software provider of the industry, contact center technical issues, downtime, and poor customer experience are now a thing of the past. In an industry ruled by uncertainty, Nobel Biz combines balanced pricing with the highest quality, topped off with outstanding support. But above all, Nobel Biz delivers peace of mind to contact center managers and owners. And for the first time, James hit that sweet spot of focus and confidence that is allowing him to take his business to new heights of profitability and success. After all, you know what they say, promises are the uniquely human way of ordering the future. Nobel Biz, the promise keepers of the industry.
Yeah, I think you're still spot on when we talk about what are you trying to achieve? What's the goal, right? There's a lot of companies that look at AI and any tech as a shiny object. Just go buy it, go implement it, go do it. I'm going to miss the boat if I don't do it. But people don't know what the it is. What are we trying to solve for? And so with that said, if you park AI for a minute and you look at just tech in general in the call center, and especially for your focus in sales and bringing in new revenue and new conversations, are there any tools or technologies that are just underrated that people just don't do the basics, or they're just missing the table stakes stuff and they should be actually paying attention to these tech items or even processes?
Process, I would say, is a big one. You would be surprised how many businesses do not manage things by the data. And when I say by the data, at a micro level, you really have to go deep to understand what's working and not working in your operation. And a lot of these businesses, even when you have hundreds of seats, it's really surprising to me how some of them have limited resources on what they do to be an administrator or a manager of the system. And so the best of breed call centers we see that are performing really well are the ones that watch the day on a real-time basis of what's happening within our call center. And they make adjustments in a real-time basis based on running reports, looking at your performance on your leads, your agents, and deciding what's working and not working and making changes like that. Now with AI, there's a possibility to automate a lot of those things, but even just doing it manually is something we see those that are not always performing that great not doing. I'd say that's a big one. It's looking at your call cadences, right? Like how aggressive are you dialing? You can no longer just dial away and make hundreds of calls and call the consumer endless a number of times. That strategy doesn't work. So you really got to pay attention to what works for you based on the data, again, what the story that the data tells, and making sure you make adjustments to your dialing strategy and figuring out which agents working, which are not working. Having that constant feedback loop with your marketing team, with the call center operations team, and just figuring that out will help you scale tremendously.
Yeah, it's all good advice, and it's important to understand those details, because I think a lot of times we go towards the big shiny objects, the big stuff. We get overly focused on these initiatives that we don't look at some of the basics, the things that we just should be focusing on. And with that said, let's kind of transition to implementations, right, of new tech, regardless of what the tech is. And obviously you understand tech really well in your space. Why do implementations fail? Like, why do these things just not get adopted? Why do people not just buy something and it turns on and it's magic and everyone's happy? What have you seen from the customer side? Like, what do people expect? And then when they buy something, is that why they don't adopt or they don't like? Or is it truly the fact that maybe at the beginning people just don't know what they're buying, or what they want, right? What does your journey look like, and what have you seen in your business space and the people you work with? Like, why do people buy tech and then it fails and adoption doesn't happen?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the adoption period is always the most crucial, right? Like if that period does not go smooth, then there is no success for the customer, there's no success for us. And so I would say it comes down to really being invested, truly being invested in the product itself and what it needs to do for your business. And what I mean by that is making sure that you as the customer are available, you and your team, you have put some thought behind using this product, and getting it to work. And so a lot of times what we see is the ones that do really well are the ones that are present during the onboarding process of being trained. They're available, they show up, right? They're asking a lot of questions. I think from a customer's perspective, this type of technology, contact center software, can be very powerful. At the same time, because it's so powerful, it can also be very challenging to operate because you can do a lot of different things with it, right? It has a lot of settings, features, functionalities. And so it really comes down to, as a customer, being clear about what your needs are. And the more you can prepare for that ahead of time, and, on our flip side is doing enough of a discovery to understand the needs of the customer, what they're looking to do, then we marry that together. But the reason why I see it failing is it's not being present and showing up and participating during the onboarding process. I think a lot of customers expect this technology to just be set up, set it and forget it. It's not a reality we live in, and as much as AI may help you automate things, you still, at the end of the day, need to have some sort of administration and maintain things. Like, you can't just buy a house, right, and just sit in it and live in it and expect it to always function and be well and work. Over time, things go wrong. And so even if a house is brand new and built and working, eventually things go wrong. And so with this type of technology, you need to continuously monitor it. What we do is we have a customer success manager that will be assigned to the customer, and then they proactively work with them to identify challenges and areas of opportunities to improve things. And then it's up to the customer to partner with us to make those changes. But we see small businesses or any business, it's time and dedication. They don't always give that time and dedication because they're wearing multiple hats. And so that's the challenge that we see.
Yeah, no, it's interesting when you think about implementing any tech, right? Whether it's a new CRM, whether it's a bot, whether or not it's a dialing platform, you have to have someone in the business that owns it going well. It can't be just this thing that happens to your staff, because your staff is running a business. I don't know any company, and maybe you do, but I'm sure we'll agree on this. There's not very many companies that have a dedicated team to vet technology, implement technology, and make sure the technology is optimized to perform at what the company wants to achieve, right? These are all people you're picking from the business that are doing a full-time job. They're running the company. And so this idea that it's like, well, the best implementations are people that are engaged and they're ready to go and they're asking questions and they're curious and they're hungry for success. And those that don't do that are less successful or maybe not successful. The common denominator, you may say, right, and I don't mean you specifically, but one would say in a business of the success or failures, how hungry is the customer? How willing is the customer to go in and say, this is a priority? And I sit back and I say, well, in silos and in spaces where they're one-offs and it is what it is, but today so much stuff is interconnected. APIs, things are passing data, things are dependent on one another. There is this ecosystem that has to be cohesive for it to truly work in your business now. You really have to understand their business and you really have to understand your product, and you have to be that consultant, right, for them, because otherwise, if the expectation is it's on the customer for their success, we all know they're running a business and they're probably not living up to that dynamic. So I know when you talk about being able to go along for that ride and have those customer success people and all that stuff, it's super important for the audience that's looking to buy tech, looking to adopt new technology. Both parties really need to be in it all the way, or it's probably going to fail. Thoughts on that?
100%. That's probably the only way it is. Both sides are bought in on it, and both do their parts. You can't do one without the other. And the other part of it, I think, is everybody these days is inundated with technology, more tools, right? Like, oh my God, we have this shiny object syndrome, situation where there's always something going on that we want to try out. And so the more you can focus, do less better, just try to get that piece of technology working and then bring others in, I would say is something that's to keep in mind to make it work.
Definitely. So let's kind of shift to like a little bit more personal, right? A little bit, we've talked a lot about AI, a lot about tech, a lot about implementations and being able to have successful transitions in technology. But, I can't imagine that you work all day long every day, even though some of us believe that we do never stop working. What do you do to get that motivation, to keep that motivation, keep pushing forward, even through the hard days? How do you get through to that next step? What are you doing to get yourself through that?
Great question. I would say, when it comes to work, we never shut this off, right? Like even when you come home, there's like thoughts, ideas, challenges. But one thing that has helped me throughout to really sustain things and keep going is just being a very spiritual person. And that's been something that I've been on a journey on probably for the past 6 or 7 years, and really just your consciousness and controlling that as much as possible. And so when challenges come up, my practice is to really embrace the challenge and be thankful for it, and really look for the lessons and ask and just try to go internal and look from within. Something about myself, I study the wisdom of Kabbalah, and that's really a good way. It has a lot of practical tools of how to manage things throughout your life when they come up. And so I've used that and the tools that it teaches you in there to just become a better person and look how to overcome challenges. And I think the biggest thing there is just always being thankful and grateful. So starting with gratitude, right? From what we've given this opportunity to do the work that we do and being able to serve all the people in our business and our customers, it's not something that everybody gets the opportunity to do so. So from a personal perspective, it's really just going within, reading a lot of books, and just learning more about how to raise your ability to be better and do better. I think one thing is to just be a giving person as much as possible, which can be challenging because as human nature is we all want things for ourselves, right? But trying to transform that desire to receive for yourself into desire to share and receive as a result by sharing. So that's a practice that I try to get better at on a personal level.
Yeah, it's great that when we can invest in ourselves, right, it helps us hopefully invest in others, and it's important to be able to have your own path. And so outside of the drive and, how do you get motivated? Do you have any hobbies or the things you like to do out of work, fun things you like to do? What kind of is that treat that you give yourself when you're not working outside of obviously always having this going?
I'm a big time Laker fan, basketball fan. So, whether it's watching the games, going to the games, traveling to other states to watch them play, I think that's a big, I don't know if it's a hobby per se or not, but I'm a big sports fan in that regard. And like even reading and just learning more, I like to read different books. And then living here in LA, there's so much to do. You can go hiking, you can go to the beach. Big foodie. I like to try out different restaurants and new things. So, just a combination of that. And I think in my past life, I may have been a DJ. I love to music, and I'm usually good with putting on music that people like. So I don't know if that comes from a past life of doing that, but really like that as well.
Yeah, well, music can be a really powerful, tool for engaging emotion and getting people together and really have a good time. So, I mean, it sounds like, reading is a big thing for you when it comes to lessons learned and being able to see how you personally grow of all of that growth that you've had in your career, and especially as an entrepreneur. Anything in particular that you'd say, look, here's this one lesson that I've learned in my career, and I just wish that everybody else would know this, right? That this is that thing you could pass along that maybe you wish you would have learned or known sooner. Anything come to mind?
Yeah. I would say I'm still learning it, but getting better, but you really need to invest in your people, both from supporting them to grow, but also when you have a business and you want to grow and go to places, you want to make sure you have the right people in the right seats. And so, we've been bootstrapped. So you always kind of have to figure out like, where do you place your bets? You can't place unlimited bets, right? And I would say when it comes to making key hires, to really try to pay what's needed to acquire, to bring in and attract the talent that you need. And so again, it's not always an easy decision to make, but invest, bring on the right people in the right seats. And when you do bring them on board, make sure to do whatever you can to support them. I've made plenty of mistakes of, not paying what needed to be paid to bring in the type of person that we needed in the business. And we suffer into the future. So that's something I would say is like, really don't underpay, really pay what's necessary for your talent. That one thing can, I'm sure you'd seen it, like one person can be the equivalent of three, right? And if it's just the right person, and there's an opportunity cost you're losing by not having the right people on board. That piece, and then just making the difficult decisions. I think everybody as a manager has challenges of making that change when it needed to be made, right? Coach them up or out. And I think we hold on to our people for too long, and you're doing disservice to that person that is staying with you if they're not succeeding from them going to their next opportunity and doing better there. So those are the two different pieces I would say that really stuck with me, that have been really big learning lessons.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you talk about the investment in your people, both obviously monetarily, but also, a common theme is, career paths, being able to make sure people actually know what's expected of them, right? What does success look like? What is the mission of the business? Do they know they're actually in alignment with the mission of the business? And so there's so many cool things that leaders get the opportunity to do, and sometimes they miss the mark, right? And it's great you can reflect and look back on when those opportunities presented themselves where you maybe missed the mark. And so with that said, I mean, ultimately we've covered a lot of really good topics. I think there was a great conversation today, but anything else that you want to add or you think that would be important for leaders, entrepreneurs, people that want to be an entrepreneur, is it worth it? Should you not do it? Go stick to your day job kind of thing. Anything that you think your experience can wrap this conversation up? I'd love to kind of see what else you'd like to end it with.
Yeah, I would say the one thing that has really helped us, succeed and thrive is to stay close to your customers and focus on building a team that thrives on curiosity and innovation. So staying close, talk to your customers, see how they're doing, find out what their challenges are, right? You take that into consideration. As a product-based company, we take that into consideration in our product roadmap so that we stay ahead and able to support them. And then a team that thrives, like when I say curiosity and innovation, you want people to ask a lot of questions, not taking things at face value, but really trying to understand what the problem is so that they can come up with solutions as well and come up with innovative things. As a company, as you know, in technology, you have to constantly evolve and innovate if you want to continue to stay in business. And so I'd say those pieces of advice I would give to anybody and everybody. What about you? What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, look, I love curiosity. Curiosity, that piece of us that's never okay with just being okay, right? That always being a student is just an awesome feeling, right? For those of us that just are always want to know why is that? How does it work? What's next? What can we do better? That kind of dynamic of constantly looking at not things like that they're always broken from a negative view, right? It's always that concept of saying, how do we in of ourselves find improvement, not because we're broken and failed, but because that search for excellence, right? That ability to constantly look at stuff and say, there's always something else we could do together. That's something is important. The other piece is a failure, right? This concept of failure is this like negative thing, right? This piece of, oh, you failed, you messed up, you fell, you better get up and wipe yourself off. And it's such a negative feeling where we sit there and go, look, everything we do to innovate, you didn't get to that piece of innovation until you got it wrong before that. No one gets it perfectly right the first time. So that feeling of having a safe environment that encourages people to fail forward, to be able to do things in the search of excellence, I love that too, right? We have a lot of people that have come on the shows and they really have this environment that's contagious, right? Where it's like, it's okay to fail. But the failure isn't about you're doing things wrong because you're not learning and you're not focusing and you're not participating and you're not present. It's you're failing because you're actually trying. You're testing things. You're trying stuff out. You're going out with your people and figuring out what's going on. I think that's super cool too. When you have an environment where people can have that dynamic is awesome. So with that being said, I mean, I know there's going to be people that want to connect with you, Nima, and want to say like, hey, I want to bounce some ideas off you. I want to be able to understand. How can they get a hold of you and kind of connect with you?
Yeah, you can reach me either on LinkedIn, just type in Nima Hakimi, or you can email me too at nima@convoso.com. Happy to have a conversation and be in touch there.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited for today's episode. I'm glad you're able to come on. We're having a good conversation. And look, for those of you that want to connect with Nima, you have a couple ways to get a hold of them. Obviously, when we get the content out, you'll be able to get some of the snippets and obviously the full episode. So it's been a great discussion. Thanks for joining. And look, to our audience, like always, appreciate you joining and tuning in. And until next time, keep moving forward and looking forward to talking to you then.
Thank you, Christian.